Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we actually haven't done one of these for a while. We are in the process of wrapping up version 12 and don't have so many design meetings right now because it's mostly just fixing bugs. But right now we have a language completeness and consistency meeting with a variety of topics. So let's get started. Multiple argument form of with.
Right, so you might remember we implemented the var arg with, so later variables can refer to earlier variables.
So how does it work? If I say with A equals B, B equals C.
B equals A plus 2, then you should get...
so then I can say A squared or something here.
Well, B squared.
B squared.
And you'll see an A inside of it.
I assume you need parentheses.
But yeah, don't you need the curly braces though for the first two arguments? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And why do we do that? Why don't we allow it without curly braces?
Because we need to disambiguate, I think.
What do we need to disambiguate?
Yeah.
Yeah, it broke things when we removed the need when you programmatically rewrite with, it becomes ambiguous.
Right. That was exactly the problem. Was when you inject arguments into the with because you're dynamically creating the first argument of the with. I think there is code in the kernel and or front end that does that. And Itai's right that when we removed the need for a list, then that code broke.
Okay, so the issue here is...
The issue is that you wanted to document it once we completed the syntax coloring.
But we haven't done it yet.
And we haven't done it.
So we shouldn't document it yet.
Okay.
But the syntax coloring we want involves correctly greening for local variables here, right? Even though there's a stream of them.
Correct.
Okay.
And
by the way, why does with not complain? I mean, in this case here, given that we know that's wrong, or something like this, we know that's wrong. Why aren't we reddening that first argument? Look, in the new world where we expect to have more code advisories, that is definitely something that we should, do as a code advisory.
I don't think we have that. I don't think that front end feature has ever been implemented.
No, but look, in general,
I have no opposition to implementing it other than John saying, well...
Right, okay, so listen, let's put this in the inventory of things that we want in the code advisory system, which will include many, many different complex syntactic things, some of which we think we are going to be able to implement as a fairly straightforward tree walking type thing, and some of which will require sophisticated analysis of the code, okay? And I think this is something early in the next development cycle we need to be looking at, is these code advisory things. I think we have a model for how to do code advisories using essentially speech bubble type things near code that you can X away if you don't like it. You see what I'm saying? So it complains, but then if in fact it's okay, you just X out the speech bubble and it won't ever complain about that again. That makes sense?
Sure.
Okay. So who can add that to the user assistance? Should be added to the user assistance meeting, okay?
I can send that, yes.
Right, so I will let just Roman speak. Right, so right now, as you can see, the third argument is colored red. So in fact, it's more than just not having full coloring. We're coloring var arg with red. And so Roman suggested that maybe we could just not color that red and possibly document it even if we don't have the
No, we shouldn't do it. It's not necessary. By the way, Carl on our live stream is saying he's looking forward to this form with. It does actually work right now. It's just that the syntax coloring doesn't properly support it.
Yeah, the main problem is that email thread has turned quite heated, and the basic conclusion is that we don't document it because syntax coloring doesn't work. And John says he doesn't implement syntax coloring until it's documented.
Oh, for God's sake.
And it's complicated, and I understand that it's complicated. But so I suggest we could at least remove the red color so we could document it, and sometime in the future, syntax coloring.
All right. Okay, we can remove the reddening.
That, John said, would be easy.
I'm sure it is, just a Verog's thing.
Yes.
All right, fine, we can do that.
So remove reddening, but without doing the full documentation. Well,
that's what I'm suggesting, yes. We can do the documentation for 12.1, particularly if we can get, some code advisory thing and or the actual syntax coloring. Is it obvious what the syntax coloring should be? Because it's essentially a localization of a localization, isn't it?
Yeah,
right. So basically, yeah. I mean, it should think it should be not.
Try a nested one, then you can see what it should be.
Okay, but so module does this already, yes? No, module does this, right? Module allows you to say z equals x.
Yeah, but
that doesn't work, right?
No.
That's not the same thing.
That's the global x, right? Yeah. If you equals x inside of the module, right? The problem, right? The difference is.
Okay, so you're saying, go ahead. Is this going to work?
No, and it's not going to work, and there's no need for it.
Because you can just do that inside the module.
Correct. Whereas with implements read-only variables. That's its purpose in life.
Yeah. Right. So. Okay, but so you're saying that I could see what this should do by just making that into...
Making it proper nested.
Yeah, I understand.
So, I mean, we have green. It's a bit ambiguous, obviously, because we don't have two colors, two shades of green. But at least, I mean, you know which are scoped and...
Actually, it's not that ambiguous, because the right-hand side variables would never green unless they were outer localized, so to speak.
Yes.
Exactly.
So it's not that bad. I mean, we would certainly be happy with something like that.
Yes, quite happy. Yes, that would be fine. Okay. All right. Look, let's switch off the reddening and let's see what's involved in doing syntax coloring for this.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, John would be here, but he had a family emergency, as you may know. So.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that would be my suggestion for 12.0. We're not gonna touch this for 12.0 otherwise.
Yeah. Right. John says he can remove the reddening for 12.0. There's no way to do the.
Fine. All right. Let's move on. What on earth is this?
Okay. So if you directly call Wolfram or Wolfram Kernel, well, I guess Wolfram really. This was something that was added as part of the licensing, right? The auto activation refresh we had last summer.
Great. Command not found for me.
Right, because on Mac we don't put it on the path. Right, so you need.
So Wolfram Script.
Well, we'll give you something different because that's the version of Wolfram Script, not the version of the kernel.
Bah. Is that really right? I mean, I've never seen that before. I didn't even know that Wolfram Script was at version 1.2.
Yeah.
I mean, if I say Wolfram Script here, it's going to come up Wolfram Language 11. Why on earth do I have the 11.31 here? Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. But so that will be what that says. So why does the dash version string come up with something completely different with a versioning that I've never even heard of?
Because that is the version of the Wolfram Script binary, which doesn't have to, right? It can launch a local kernel. It can go out to the cloud. It can launch different local kernels.
I see. So you're saying if I were to do, I see. So if I say Wolfram Script dash cloud,
Right. You probably need to give it
code or something to execute.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's more complicated, and that's not giving me that. This prompt happens to give me a version number. But
Right.
you're saying this is. I do not like the fact that this doesn't have dashes and is smooshed. I mean, this is non-smooshed. This has dashes and is smooshed. Where did that come from? This string seems like a rogue string to me.
It's well, I mean, that may just be that Garrett, are you just in? No, you're not actually launching a kernel at this point, right? So
right,
that's probably just a build issue with Wolfram Script that you need to have the proper.
Well, so maybe Garrett if Garrett is here, can you explain himself? Where did that string come from?
Sure. So there was just a request, and that's the kind of build platform for Mac.
Right. That's the actual system ID, right? If you evaluated $system ID, that's the value you would get.
Right.
So that's where that string came from.
And that was just kind of a request to have a version just so people could keep track of Wolfram Script's versions a little bit better.
Right, because you only ever have one Wolfram Script, even if you have 23 Mathematicas like I do.
So I wasn't really aware of this kind of expanded Mac OS string, and we could change to using something like that.
Is this even correct? Mac space OS space X?
It certainly was at the time that was written.
Okay, fine. Unless Apple changed its conventions, but okay. So, I mean, so what's the point here? So
the point is, look at this crazy output you get. Right. So we added three things. One was the -activate to just activate the kernel and quit and have an exit code that tell you whether or not the activation was successful. Right. One was -machine ID, which just prints out the machine ID and quits. And then there was this -version thing, which just looks bizarre, and then is this weird amalgam of like the version and license info. And I think
it looks crazy.
Right. I mean, there are two directions we can go in. One is a more minimal direction, like Wolfram Script, which is just have 12, and maybe the system.
What is documented? I mean, does Wolfram Kernel have a documented?
Yes. I mean, we're rewriting it, but this is in fact this option is documented. What you'll see in product is the old page.
By the way, that's just wrong. What it does, that's a documentation bug. Somebody should report it. If all it has is details, you just open the detail. I mean, that's an incorrect page. That's
right. Well, we're about to. If you look at the next item, it's the complete rewrite of the page, so we don't need to.
Okay, fine. Okay. Well, so what's your point here? You want I mean, this could be license info or something.
Yeah. So right. Well, my point is, I think we should decide what we want -version. Well, I guess we want to decide if we want -version, and if we do, what it should say, or should we have a dash?
I think -version should do the same as it does for Wolfram Script. It should be a readable string that is the version, and Wolfram Script should change itself to have the same string convention as the startup banner.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't remember now, but I doubt that was actually my suggestion, that version would change. But we certainly need a command line option that outputs the license ID, just like it does with the machine ID. And max license processes would also be nice, but
well, okay, fine. But I think that look,
we need a separate one for that, for the automatic activation.
Right. It will take when 5 minutes or 2 minutes to add a -license ID option. I have no. If you wanted,
I think we should do it. I think we should do that. I think that the alternative here is to return some structure, but what's it going to be? Like a JSON structure, a Wolfram language structure? This is neither of those. It's some kind of pigeon JSON weird thing.
Yes, I mean these outputs should be machine readable. So the machine ID is perfect. You see, every script language can easily parse that. But even the $license ID colon is not necessary if you have separate command line arguments.
So let's have separate command line.
Also directed infinity 1, I would rather like to see infinity.
Yeah, I agree. That's crazy what we have there.
What would you like to see?
Infinity.
Oh, just the string infinity.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Right.
I mean, separate names for these outputs.
Right. I mean, this is very early in the cycle, so it's possible not all of the. I mean, this may just be an artifact of the fact that we're printing it so early in the cycle that output form isn't active yet, right? And so
right. But we can just have a special case for that because we know this is an integer or infinity.
Right.
Why a single dash for long options? This is
because that is our long-time convention. There is a more modern convention that uses a single dash for single character options and the 2 dashes for options that are whole words, which I believe is a GNU convention.
It's actually POSIX.
But there are plenty of POSIX programs that use single dashes for everything.
Should we support both?
Is
there any ambiguity in that?
It's not a standard thing to do. That would be an
okay. Well, fine. All right. Okay. Turning them into green pages. Examples are not quite finished. Okay. So these are in icon.
Yeah, and they were last touched on Wednesday, so I presume you don't need to update your documentation.
I don't think I do. Wednesday. It's now Friday. No, I do not. Okay, how do I get to them?
So there's a program pages. It's about a third of the way down.
Yep.
And then if you click on the O, it will give you a little chooser. Oh, or you can type. Yeah, so we have a Wolfram new and a Wolfram Kernel new.
Okay, how much detail are we going over these in?
As much as you want. I mean, basically, I wanted you to see the main and the description, and
why does this even exist? This Wolfram thing, as opposed to Wolfram Script?
Because that is the kernel executable.
But this is the kernel executable, isn't it?
Not on all platforms. Maybe you should read the descriptions, and then you'll understand. Just understand better.
Device, typically a keyboard. What is this going to look like for the web engine? What is this going to look like? Okay, who here knows what the whole Wolfram engine is? Our node here? Does our node know what the is our node here or not?
Our node is not here.
Okay, so I mean, somebody who knows what we're doing with Wolfram engine versus Wolfram web engine.
Stephen, please read the description.
I've read them. I just read this. I just read it.
Okay, I didn't get any response.
No, I was silently reading.
Okay.
Well, at least I read the left-hand one. Oh, the same program. Okay. Console-based kernel session normally reads input from standard in. From device. Did you mean device or a device?
From a device.
That's a typo.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So the point is, on Mac and Linux, Wolfram and Wolfram Kernel are the same program, and basically one is a symbolic link to the other.
Okay.
On Windows, they are two different programs because one works in the command.exe console. That's Wolfram. And Wolfram Kernel is the thing that launches, is the Windows mode program, which launches the little, window console thing that you type into, if you remember back from your Windows days.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're very similar. and we can probably make them even a bit more similar, but they are distinct programs. And for example, on Windows, Wolfram Kernel can't read standard input or standard output. You can't redirect input or output because it's disconnected from the shell, because it's a Windows has this strict separation between console mode programs and Windows mode programs. So once you launch it off to Windows...
Okay, let's zoom out for a second here, okay? So we have this notion of Wolfram Engine. We are about to start distributing Wolfram Engine as a separate thing. What is the binary that is being distributed in the Wolfram Engine package?
Well, I would presume it would be Wolfram/Wolfram Kernel.
Okay, but the binary that we are documenting people using is Wolfram Script. Well,
that will then presumably be installed alongside the Wolfram Engine.
Okay, but we don't really want... Wait. The Wolfram Engine, this is very confusing and probably wrong. Okay, because remember, there's also things like Wolfram Web Engine, which is something, I mean, what you've written about Wolfram Kernel is that it's accessible from a device or a WSTP connection. Okay?
Yes, and so, for example, Wolfram is the program that is invoked when you launch the parallel kernel. And so it is a fairly important binary.
Well, I think it's actually Wolfram Kernel, unless on Linux you're directly calling Wolfram. But that's just assembling to Wolfram Kernel, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, look. I mean, the question is, what is that background noise, by the way? Could you?
That is Adam leaving the office.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay. How do these options relate to the Wolfram Script options?
They're completely separate.
But do they correspond? I mean, are they compatible with?
So any options that Wolfram Script doesn't know about, it passes to the kernel it starts.
But this doesn't look like a green page. I mean, these ones...
Well, look at this. If you looked at the source page of Wolfram Script, you would see it looks...
Okay, fine. So this is going to turn into a green page.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So what you're telling me is that these up here, -script, what the hell is that? -script file is the equivalent of -file for Wolfram Script.
It's sort of equivalent, yes. It's not.
What's -pw file? Does Wolfram Script have one of those?
That's PW file is password file. If you want,
I know.
Non-standard, like if Wolfram Script is calling a kernel, then it will pass all of the kernel options to it, and the kernel will interpret them. But
I understand that. I'm asking in Wolfram Script, any capability. Okay, so we've not documented a -password or -pw file, have we, or have we? Garrett?
Not in Wolfram Script.
Yes, we have. -password right there.
That's
different.
Separate option. That one's meant for the cloud authentication rather than the password file.
But this says -password. It's the same named option.
Oh.
By the way, also this font is wrong here. There's a bunch of things that are glitched up in here. Those vertical bars could do with being gray, and there's a bunch of silly stuff here. Somebody from documentation should look at.
I think one thing to understand is that the Wolfram binary goes back to, it says new in version 1. So you shouldn't expect too much consistency between those option names and the ones from 12.0.
Fine, but I think what we should be doing is, okay, look, here's what I think. I think we should get rid of, we have Wolfram Script. Whatever binary Wolfram Script is calling for the Wolfram engine, which we need to make that binary be I mean, why is that binary directly callable? Why is it not? Why don't we ask everybody?
Because
every
the front end can call it, right? The kernel can call it. You might just want to call it directly. I mean, why shouldn't it? I guess my question to you is, why shouldn't you call it directly? I mean, maybe you
Okay, fair enough. Okay, but if we call it directly, I don't think this confusion with Wolfram kernel versus Wolfram is crazy. And it's crazy because you're never going to know which is which. So which one under Windows, Wolfram is one which launches a window or not?
Well, no. It's the one that launches a a console interface, like it says right there. So that's the one which doesn't open a window.
Whereas the one called Wolfram Kernel does open a window.
Yes.
Oh my God. I would never have guessed that. Never.
But typically that one that launches as a Windows application would have an icon on which you click, but the raw command line program will usually not be invoked by an icon. So that confusion doesn't exist in practice.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, but the thing that has an icon, okay, look, let's make a list here of what we actually have. I mean, this is kind of a nutso list. Okay? What we've got Wolfram Script. What has gone wrong with something is very, very, very wrong with my style sheet settings. And that needs to be debugged, actually. Is Sushma here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you show me which version you're using? Okay.
Okay, in any case. Okay, so first thing is Wolfram Script. Okay, so what is that roughly? That is a scripting wrapper that can call the Wolfram engine.
It can call a Wolfram kernel.
No, but we're calling it a Wolfram engine. That's the branding of the thing.
But wait. I thought, no. Okay, maybe you've completely changed it yet again. But isn't the Wolfram engine everything, including the front end? And
it is, yes.
Right. So that's different from.
But the front end. No. The Wolfram engine is accessed through the kernel, but it contains a front end for purposes of rasterization and so on. Okay, that can call the Wolfram engine locally, on a server, in the cloud, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I saving this, Sushma? Where should I save this? Should I save this in product notes, or where should I save this?
Designs, SW notes, miscellaneous.
That's a wimp out.
Because yeah, when I don't know anywhere, I ask you to save there.
Okay, well, I'll save this under. Well, don't we have a command line? Don't we have a thing for command line programs?
There might be something for Wolfram Script, but I need to check it out.
No, there isn't. Okay, let me just write this as command line programs. Okay, so it's under miscellaneous, which is always a wimp out. Okay, scripting wrapper that can call. Okay, let's write our definitions down. Okay, Wolfram engine. Could somebody see if our node is available? Both our node and Todd Gailey would be relevant to this.
Okay.
Okay, Wolfram engine. Well, let's start off with Wolfram kernel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that is the raw binary that implements kernel functionality. It does not include the front end, which is a separate binary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're missing a not from that sentence, right?
Thank you. Okay, Wolfram engine is the program that can be called through, now let's see, how does it get called? Through Wolfram Script, WSTP, etc., to get Wolfram Language functionality. The Wolfram Engine bundle includes the front end for rasterization.
Well, I would disagree with the word program there. I mean, it's an application or application bundle.
Which, this thing here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, does every platform call it an application at this level? Okay, let's just write down the other things that we know. Okay, Wolfram Web Engine. That's the thing that can be called. This can be connected. That's connectable to a web server. Okay, and probably nobody in this meeting knows about that. That's Wolfram Web Engine 4. I don't even remember what the name of the thing is. A2E or something. What is it called? A2. I don't remember what it's called. Sushma, do you remember what that's called, or can you look it up?
Yep.
Okay, so then we have much more sophisticated levels of things like Wolfram Application Server. That is callable through HTTP. Okay, it's different from these things because these are not a Wolfram engine. A naked Wolfram engine can't be accessed through HTTP. It doesn't expose an HTTP interface, right? It's not acting like a web server. Make sense? Todd, did Todd join here?
He's about to.
But it looks like his audio is still in the process of connecting.
Okay, so these things here are all okay. So okay, so Wolfram Engine is an application bundle, correct? Which is called by Wolfram Script. Wolfram Web Engine is also an application bundle that is called by Wolfram Application Server. Correct? Todd, can you confirm that?
I'm not sure. Well, first of all, I thought I wouldn't say that Wolfram Script calls Wolfram Engine. Isn't Wolfram Script part of Wolfram Engine? I thought you were saying earlier today that Wolfram Engine was the name for the, a suite of things, including the player front end. So Wolfram Script
No. The player front end is completely separate. That's completely separate. That's just happens to be included in the. That's just because of the distribution binaries. No, that is a confusion. Is our node joining us also?
It doesn't really matter about that, but
it does matter because it's another confusion. I mean, that's a completely separate thing. Okay.
Right. Well, there has been some debate as to what the name Wolfram Web Engine refers to, whether that refers to essentially the Java, the thing that we used to call Web Mathematica, or whether it refers
we've been through this about 18 times. Okay, we've been through.
I'm trying to figure out how.
Okay, what was the latest version?
Say that the Wolfram Application Server calls the Wolfram Web Engine. I'm trying to understand what that could be if that sentence were true.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is that this web engine has support. What is the name of that glue code? Do I have to go look it up? I go look it up.
Don't look it up. I can tell you. What are you asking? What glue code are you referring to?
I'm asking what is this? The Wolfram Web Engine is for a particular style of connector to web servers. What is that style of connector? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Wolfram Web Engine is are you talking about like a servlet container? that what you're talking about? That's a type of container.
Look. What we're naming this is Wolfram Web Engine Library for AIO, HTTP, J2EE, etc. Right? So this is a wrapper library. Look, that's a wrapper library.
J2EE then.
Okay, so this is for Python, Java, etc. Right? So that's the thing that calls Wolfram Engine. Right? This is another thing that is another wrapper that calls Wolfram Engine. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, I mean, Wolfram Web Engine Library for J2EE is the thing that we used to call web mathematics.
No, it isn't. It's not the
server. That would have been a good name for it. I don't know.
Okay, fine, whatever. But the application server is a containerized thing that can be stood up to deliver APIs, et cetera, right?
Right.
Okay, so that is a complete deliverable thing. This is purely a library where you get to stand up your own web server. Okay, that includes a web server. Make sense? This does not include a web server. Does not include a web server. Right? You're on your own in terms of having a web server. Right? Can somebody give me the link to the client library for Python page?
Yeah, okay.
Just send me that link, please. Okay, so these things, as I understand it, the client library, these are alternatives, okay? So Wolfram Script can be thought of, we'll put it up with these, okay? Wolfram Script is AKA Wolfram Language Client Library for the shell, right? That's what it essentially is, right? Correct? Is that right or not?
Good description, I think.
What the hell is this? I know whatever you sent me is not right. All I got was this. I got a page with no formatting and a very giant guitar.
Yeah, that's the same issue that has been going on with the function repository and the neural network repository. If you refresh the page, it will be fine, but it's.
I already did that twice.
Is this put a slash at the end of the URL?
Oh, sorry, that's weird.
Okay, so that is.
Oh, I did copy it. I did copy it with a slash.
Okay. But listen, obviously we got to make it work without the slash then.
Yeah. This is just a Dorian's, own version. So.
Okay. All right. Fine. So just to be clear, what this does, this calls Wolfram Engine, correct?
What do you mean by calls Wolfram Engine?
From Python. Yes.
So somewhere in here, there is a thing that says, let's see. Oh, for God's sake, could you tell him set up is 2 words when it is a verb like that?
Okay.
Sigh. Did DQA not look at this page yet?
This version I don't think has been pushed live yet. This is just
Okay.
Okay.
So if we look here, there will be a place where it says start a Wolfram Engine, if I'm not mistaken. Where is that?
It's Wolfram. I think it's Wolfram Language session.
Right, that starts the session.
And the binary that it calls is Wolfram Kernel.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Because that's how you access kernel functionality, and the kernel can call the front end if it needs it. Which is why I say that the Wolfram Engine is an application bundle, which includes the kernel. It includes Mathematica or Wolfram Desktop or whatever the name of the front end is. It includes Wolfram Kernel.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't include that. You can't start the front end independently from Wolfram Engine. In other words, if you take something like Wolfram 1.
Wait. If I have Mathematica or Wolfram Desktop installed, when you double click on that application, it calls Mathematica or it calls Wolfram Desktop, and that is the program that started.
I know, but that's not what it happens in the Wolfram Engine case. The Wolfram Engine case is not doing that, right? It's not doing that. It doesn't have those binaries. It has a front end which it uses for rasterization. You can't get a notebook interface. This has no notebook interface.
Even if it has no notebook interface, it must still have the front end binary for the kernel to call it.
It does, but it has no built-in interface. So don't tell me that it has a Wolfram 1, system application, because it doesn't. It doesn't. It has. I don't know what the front end is called. I don't know what the front end binary is called, but it's not called one of those things.
I didn't say it was called one of those things.
Okay. Does anybody know what it is called?
Probably Wolfram Engine.
The front end? Not a chance. What is it called?
I have to check on my. Hold on a second.
It's called Mathematica for the product Mathematica.
But that's not what it's called in Wolfram Engine, is it?
I'm pretty sure it's called Wolfram.
I don't know what it's called.
But that's stupid and completely wrong if that's the case.
Yeah. That would be wrong. Let me check. Hold on a second.
Okay, so it has a component called Wolfram Kernel. You're saying?
Yeah. It's currently called Wolfram Engine, but that's wrong.
It's wrong. That's wrong. Wrong.
Yeah, I know. So, there's lots of bugs. This is not a released product. It's not even properly configured yet. So
what should we call it? Should we call it front end? Should we call it notebook interface?
On the Pi, I believe we called it Wolfram front end, right? So we could call it Wolfram front end.
Okay. I mean, that's certainly, it should be the notebook front end, because there might be a different front end. It's a very big mouthful. What do you think? I mean, that's at least clear. Nobody's confused about what it is.
I have it on my screen, all the names right now, if you want to go over the full list so we don't miss anything.
Can you just send it to me?
Yeah, I can do that too. I'll use email in this case because it's gonna.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. And my claim is that, I guess I don't know for a fact because it's not a finished program, but product. But my claim is that the Wolfram engine will have both Wolfram kernel and Wolfram in it. Because on Windows, those will be separate programs.
Okay. So we're going to come to that in just a second. Okay. So Wolfram Engine Wolfram Engine bundle, I guess, as a courtesy.
Did you get the email?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on. As a courtesy, the Wolfram Engine bundle will include Wolfram Script, language client library for Python, etc. Right? But the actual thing that is called the engine, these will be separately downloadable. The actual thing called the engine is that bundle.
Yep.
If you can pull up these are the names we have to discuss, if that's the purpose of this discussion. So there's the product name, right? Wolfram Research, and you see Wolfram Engine 12.0. So that's the product name, Wolfram Engine. Wait. But where are you looking here? Where it says directory at the very top above the table. It says directory. That's the directory you're in. That's the installation directory, top level, right? So normally we'll say something like, instead of Wolfram Engine, we'll say something like Wolfram Desktop, or it will say Mathematica, right? Exactly. That's the product name. Okay, and then the version. That's the standard organization that we've had for, 20, 30 years. Right. As long as I've been here. So yeah, I remember I redid it. It was a total mess, like 4 or 5 years in. So yes, this is so then add-ons, configuration, system files are all directories. The dot files are, usually not visible, or they're just gonna, license.txt is the Wolfram Engine license that Eric Schacht, has provided. Yep. Then math.exe and wolfram.exe are the same things. Those are crazy. They should be, math.exe should be removed. Okay, let me take. Are we taking notes in this meeting, or do I need to?
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Okay, thank you.
Math kernel should be removed.
Math kernel and Wolfram kernel are also the same, so they're kind of, yeah, that's stupid, but it's
That's just because they started with a mathematical layout and started renaming and removing things. I mean,
yeah. But that,
Okay.
that can be removed. But like
Okay, so Wolfram Engine.exe.
that's going to start. That's basically the front end binary. So
Okay, so that will be Wolfram Notebook front end.
Wolfram Notebook front end. Okay.
Is there any problem with the name of that length?
I don't care what it's called. Nobody ever sees it.
So.
Most people.
I don't think.
I was going to say, is it ever going to be visible?
Well, this is if you do a directory. No, if there's some crazy Windows program launcher that is an 8.3, something or other.
No,
but
there's no problem with that in this day and age.
It's not really a front end, right? I mean, you don't double click on it. It's just a service thing for the kernel.
Well, it opens as it opens as a
right. I'm not sure
player. It opens like the player. You can still watch, open notebooks with it, just like you can do the player in a read-only mode.
Okay, so if it's like player, then yes, it is serving the role of a front end.
Yeah, but not an editable, notebook interface. It's
maybe it should be called something different, rather than notebook front end.
You can just call it the Wolfram player because that's the functionality it provides.
That's super confusing.
Okay, well the
unless you want it to be an identical binary to what happens if you download just the player bundle.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Okay, but is it exactly the same thing?
It is the same binary. It's only the license that's different. I think. I'm pretty sure.
Are you sure? In which case, what is it called in the notebook player layout? What is the notebook player layout called? What is the analog of Wolfram?
Yeah. Hold on. All of these things take a second.
Right now.
Okay. In the player, it's called Wolfram player.exe.
Right. Now, if we want this to be the thing that launches the GUI so you can open notebooks, I don't understand why we don't want this called Wolfram Engine, right? I mean, we'll want the title bar to say Wolfram Engine, right? So
I'll send you the player files.
No, it shouldn't. The title bar should say Wolfram Player if it's opening an actual notebook.
So that's the list of files you get in the player at the moment.
What the hell is Wolfram Script original?
Oh, that's my. I was testing things.
Okay. All right, fine. Okay, so the issue is, it so happens that the notebook service program in Wolfram Engine is the same as Wolfram Player at the present time. Right?
Right.
Might not always be that way.
As a matter of fact, I installed the same build, so it's even the same number of bytes if you look at the
okay, whatever. As it happens right now, might not always be that way.
Right. I mean, there's a core layout where things are pulled from, so it's we're going to make an effort to make them the exact same thing.
Well, I don't think we should commit to that, because I think the correct name for this binary is Wolfram Player. For the Wolfram Player binary, look. So this is.
I mean, the name can be different, but the
yeah, I understand.
For QA purposes, it's nice to have the exact same binaries.
Okay, that's the binary, but the Wolfram Player also has a Wolfram kernel in it because it needs it as a service. So it's two different ways round. In the case of the Wolfram Engine, the kernel needs something like the player as a service. In the case of the player, it needs the kernel as a service.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so the question is,
and I'm pretty sure that Wolfram only exists on.
Right. Okay, that's not relevant right yet. Okay, let's come to the
finish, Stephen. Let me finish.
Okay.
Wolfram only exists on non player type distributions, because it by definition launches a sort of
I understand. Launches a read-write kernel.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this case here, this thing officially could be called, this is essentially something like a Wolfram Notebook service. Is that true? But that's going to be so freaking confusing.
Yeah, I mean, we do have...
Just say Wolfram Notebook interface.
But it isn't, because it isn't providing the interface. It's not providing the read-write interface. It's only providing a service.
Wolfram Notebook Reader, Wolfram Notebook Player.
Well, then we might as well call it Player.
Well, that's what it is. It plays notebooks.
All right. Okay, fine. So then the provisional decision is, inside the Wolfram Engine application bundle, there is Wolfram Kernel and Wolfram Player.
Mhm.
Inside the Wolfram Player bundle, there's also Wolfram Player, which is now in charge, and Wolfram Kernel, which is subsidiary.
Okay. And Itai agrees with that?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have that. Okay. So now, so that's the notebook service, provides a notebook service subsidiary to the kernel. Okay. Now, next question. So all of these things, this Wolfram Language Client Library calls Wolfram Kernel. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Which can be part of, which is part of the Wolfram Engine application bundle.
Yep.
Okay, is it in a position to call directly into the Wolfram kernel that exists in the Wolfram Player application bundle? Probably not.
I think it does. I mean, I don't know if it's using. We have code that allows it to allows things to find kernel. I mean, right? The same code that Wolfram Script uses to find the kernel binary, if you haven't manually specified one, is a library that could be linked into the Java. I don't know that it is.
Okay, so that should be determined.
The player bundle will deny a connection based on licensing.
Okay, fine. Which is probably the correct thing to do.
One other thing.
Except there's a bug in 11.3 by which you can do it through Wolfram Script, I believe. But
okay, but cannot call the Wolfram kernel in the Wolfram Player application bundle.
There's one other case we shouldn't forget, and that's the kernel that is used in parallel computing. And so when I SSH into a remote machine, I have to know that there is a binary which at the moment is called Wolfram that is on the search path, and that launches the kernel. That's at least on Linux and probably Mac OS. So there is probably a user local bin Wolfram or a user bin Wolfram. And that is something we need so that this works without having to know where exactly that thing is, where the kernel is.
Okay, so wait a minute. Okay, so hold on a second. There's a separate issue, which is it's called Wolfram Player, not Wolfram Notebook Player. Is that correct? Sorry, this thing here, is that the correct name?
I believe it's called Wolfram Player.
Okay.
Last I knew, it was called Wolfram Player.
Okay. So the next is a path discoverable Wolfram or similar path discoverable Wolfram binary. Right? That's what you're asking for, Roman.
Yes.
E.g. used in parallel computing, possibly in remote kernels.
Yes, and ultimately also the front end when it connects to a kernel.
Well, that's what I mean. Also front end calling remote kernels. Okay, so this is something where basically the use case that we would expect is a pure, thing where you go, you're purely going basically, SSH machine, and then you're saying something like that.
Wolfram minus WSTP, yes, usually. Yes.
Okay, so what that did, so that did the right thing for me. I SSH'd into a random Linux machine.
Yes,
and there I am.
That's what I rely on.
Okay.
Yes, there's also a Wolfram kernel on the path, which is assembling. They're both assemblings to the same program. So because on Linux, there's no difference between Wolfram and Wolfram kernel. On Windows, it would probably be better to use Wolfram kernel because you can.
Okay, so you're saying that if I do that, I'll get the same thing.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I bizarrely got something that said Mathematica kernel.
That just means the last Wolfram product you installed was a Mathematica and not a Wolfram desktop. So when it launches,
because what that's doing is it's rewriting the path program. Okay, so the question here is, what is the path? Is the quotes path program, right? How is it affected by Wolfram 1 installation or Mathematica installation, or all kinds of other random installations, etc., right?
In the future, the thing you would install on a machine to be used for parallel computing would be the Wolfram engine, because that contains the kernel and the service front end. So that's the one that should be on the path if there are several on a machine.
Okay, fine. Okay, so let's walk through this, okay? So what we're saying here is that right now we have not defined what. Right now we have Wolfram Script, which does whatever it does. It's effectively the shell. Wolfram Script seems to me to be the thing that I would expect. If you're starting a shell, which SSH does by its very name, right? If you're starting a shell, then what you should be using is the client library program for the shell, aka Wolfram Script.
And I think that works. If you try that, what you just did.
Well, it may work, but we have to decide what we want to standardize on here. So hold on. So you're saying if I say SSH Wolfram Script, you're saying I will get yet another copy of the exact same thing, except now it has the correct engine thing.
So you are correct. That's the one you would expect to call for interactive use. But I will not use Wolfram Script. I will use Wolfram /WSTP for parallel computing.
Okay, so hold on. So this is a path discoverable binary. I think the correct answer here. Okay, Wolfram Script doesn't have a WSTP option. Is that correct?
Not one that it understands on its own.
Okay, so to me, so I'm going to make a claim about how this should work. Okay, claim is the pure shell interaction, i.e. stood in, stood out, etc., right?
Mm-hmm.
Is Wolfram Script. Okay, then I'm going to claim the WSTP interaction endpoint, basically, is Wolfram Kernel.
Well, that's not completely true.
Well, what is true?
I think Wolfram Script calls the Wolfram kernel. Is that right?
Sure does.
But
this is providing.
Wolfram Script calls Wolfram.
Well, okay, but I want to get rid of this thing called Wolfram, okay? Because I think it's confusing. And we'll come to the Windows case in a minute.
No,
right?
we can't get rid of it because everybody depends on it. Like people, it's all hard coded into. It would be just like know.
Okay, fine. Well, we can symbolic link it to something else. Let's define what we want to have happen. The pure shell interaction is Wolfram Script. Do we agree? The thing that is intended to be interacted with through the shell is Wolfram Script.
Maybe. I mean, I use both of these for different purposes. It's just
Both of which?
Both Wolfram and both Wolfram and Wolfram Script, and actually Wolfram Kernel when I'm on Windows.
Okay, hold on. Okay. So Wolfram you're using because it has a WSTP endpoint. Is that correct?
No, I'm using it because I want to just launch a kernel that says Mathematica, and it's on my Mac.
Okay, fine. But that's just because you've been doing that for 25 years or something. I mean,
isn't it the case that Wolfram Script, if you are on a system that has multiple kernels on it, multiple installs, that Wolfram Script is going to pick one of them?
That is correct.
And you can,
which is probably the reason that I use Wolfram Script differently from a standalone kernel sometimes, is how much control I want over which thing is actually running.
Sure. Right. But I'm saying if you want a generic discoverable shell interaction, use Wolfram Script.
Yes.
If you want a generic discoverable launch a binary using, some system call, for example, right? As opposed to using the shell, if you were launching through a system call, you should launch a binary like Wolfram Kernel, I claim.
Correct.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason we need Wolfram is that there is only ever one Wolfram script, but there are many Wolframs, right?
Okay, fine. Well, let's understand that. Okay, e.g. launch through a system call, right? As opposed to... Okay, so the typical thing you'll be doing there is to say Wolfram Kernel -WSTP, is that correct? To get to have it expose a WSTP endpoint?
Yes, together with 10 other options which tell it whether to listen or to connect and so on. But
okay, fine.
For me, the important thing is that it is on the path and it doesn't change too frequently, right? At the moment, Wolfram is the one that is in the default SSH script.
Okay, so now somebody was explaining that you're saying, okay, so pure shell interaction is this, and on any given system, there would only be one copy of Wolfram Script, you claim.
No.
On the path.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Wolfram Kernel. What is this thing? Okay, so what's the role of the Wolfram program in all of this stuff?
It is the thing that is installed on the path per product, at least on Linux, and it's on right. It's the thing that Wolfram Script calls to actually launch a REPL on Windows.
The thing that Wolfram Script calls to launch a REPL,
yes.
Because it doesn't call. So Wolfram Kernel.
Because Wolfram Kernel is a Windows mode program, not a console mode program.
But why doesn't, I mean, in the style of Wolfram Kernel having a WSTP option, why doesn't it have options? WSTP is not a REPL, right? WSTP is a protocol endpoint.
So what's your point?
My point is that I think it should have, from what you are describing, what I would expect to see is, Wolfram -console mode, Wolfram Kernel -console
not possible.
Whatever the other one is called. What is the other one anyway?
That's just not how Windows works.
Explain.
Windows has a strict separation between console mode programs and Windows mode.
Fine. Okay. Fine. So, but so you're saying that the binary has to be different. The wrapper binary has to be different under Windows.
Yes.
Okay. So I would claim. Which one is the?
And note that Windows kernel is also a REPL binary.
I know it's a REPL right now. I'm claiming that actually is sort of an abuse that it's a REPL binary. Okay, so let me understand. In the Windows, what is the analog of what I'm doing here on a Mac or on a Linux machine?
There isn't.
What's that?
There isn't.
So this type of thing, there is no so what are the two types of programs on Windows?
Here, let me share.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, all right, my Windows machine went to sleep, so, right. But like I said, on Linux, Wolfram and Wolfram Kernel are both symlinks to the same program, right? There's only one
Yes,
binary.
I know. I understand that. I've understood that. So you're going to show on Windows how it works differently.
Yes.
I wonder where that is. Okay. Ready?
All right. So, right. So if I do Wolfram Kernel, it launches a windowed REPL.
Okay.
Which apparently I have some environment set, the variable set. Whereas if I do, I don't know what happened. I just do wolfram.exe, then it opens in the shell.
I understand. I got it. Okay. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay. Very, very weird. Okay. Can you unshare? Okay. So I would claim that what really should exist there is something called, okay, so the Windows case, basically, we're talking about here. I'm claiming what should exist is that one thing, the pure REPL is just like Wolfram Script. Is like is like the DOS, quotes DOS REPL.
Okay.
That was what you showed me second, right? Is what I would call the DOS REPL.
Sure.
Okay. Then I would claim there should be another binary called something like, I don't know, console or something, which is the, windowed REPL. That's what I would claim. On Windows, that there are two different things, and that neither of those is Wolfram Kernel, which is a thing which maybe as a courtesy will launch as a REPL sometimes, but that's not really its point. Its real point is to be a thing that is a binary that could be called by a system call that can expose various endpoints like WSTP, and that's how it works. And that under Windows, in addition to Wolfram Script, which would do the same thing as it does on every other platform, one would have a thing called Wolfram Console. Now, the discoverable thing on the path is yet a different thing. Because presumably what you want to be discoverable on the path for Windows is the DOS REPL program. Is that true? Or it doesn't really, it's neither. It's a thing which is going to have a WSTP option. It's going to be the thing that can be called by a system call. Is that right?
Right.
Okay, so let's go through this again. So I claim Wolfram Kernel, the fact that it does something by default when you launch it on a shell command line is purely coincidental. That's some kind of historical courtesy, right? Because I claim that otherwise, most programs, don't expose a REPL by default. They just, most random, you start a random C program, it does not expose a REPL by default. This one happens to do that just as a courtesy, but normally expects to get, WSTP messages and so on. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
But the Wolfram Script DOS REPL is provided by the the Wolfram.exe binary. There's nothing in Wolfram Script that takes care of the REPL. It's just, it just launches the other
okay, that's fine. Who cares? That's my point. Is what is the user exposed version of this? What it does in the inside. The full layout has 10,000 files in it, right? Which one it happens to call is its own separate issue. Unless what I'm claiming is for that. Okay, so let's look at what calls what. So if you're going through, okay, so for things like this, the client library for Python, this calls Wolfram Kernel because it's calling it with a WSTP option, is it not? The client library uses WSTP. Is that correct, Todd? Todd?
It may,
That's,
Garrett.
I
Is that,
think it's through JLink, which I believe
Okay,
uses
is
that.
Todd here or not?
how
Yeah,
does
I'm
he-
here. I'm here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Wolfram-
could you answer the question then, please? Am I correct in believing that the client library uses, for
Yes,
Python,
it
uses
uses
WSTP?
No, it does not use WSTP.
But
It uses
JLink uses
0MQ.
WSTP.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Python library uses 0MQ, and JLink uses WSTP.
Okay, so let me just write that down because, okay, so Python library uses ZMQ. Java library uses JLink, which uses WSTP. So is it the case that there's a way of starting Wolfram Kernel that exposes a ZMQ endpoint?
Nothing built in.
Well, how do you get to it through 0MQ?
I'm not exactly sure. He probably maybe sent some command line, dash run something or other that makes it wait on a 0MQ socket.
Okay, let's go through this again. Okay. Okay, we've got a program that is trying to interface with this Wolfram kernel thing, right? It can send it the protocol and packets and so on of WSTP, right? It can send it the protocol and packets of ZMQ.
Well, it could also just call it with, a dash run argument, which tells it execute some Wolfram language code on startup and then connect to that ZMQ and communicate over ZMQ.
Okay, fine. All right, fine. So it might or might not be packaged in a single command line argument for Wolfram kernel. But
right.
the end effect of this is that Wolfram kernel will either communicate through, what is all this stuff?
No, I'm just trying to look up the code that explains what it's using. So it's
Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. All right. So again, let's come back to this again, please. Okay. So I think what we want, I claim the correct answer here is a shell path, the shell path discoverable binary. Okay. The shell path discoverable binary should be Wolfram Script.
Fine.
Now, that shell path discoverable binary doesn't want to be called with the WSTP option, does it?
It can. I mean, it just calls.
But can Wolfram Script be called with a WSTP option?
Yes. It just passes it to the kernel that it calls, right? If it doesn't get any options that it specifically understands, it just execs a kernel.
Okay. Fine. Okay.
But that's an extra step. So if someone wants to connect to a WSTP kind of Wolfram kernel directly, they may not want to rely on Wolfram Script to just pick an installation. They may want kind of a specific. I guess what I'm saying is
about all the magical remote things, then, right? I mean, that's no more reliable than just calling Wolfram, which will happen to be whatever is the last
that's fair.
program you installed for Wolfram kernel, right? I mean, on Linux.
Okay, look, the problem is this concept of a blind thing that is shell path discoverable is very weird. I mean, I know everybody does it, but it's very weird and dangerous. And Roman, what is the in the kernel connection manager world, do you still expect to have the shell path discoverable binary?
Well, I mean, it's the default in all the scripts that are launched for making a connection. And you can change that, of course. If you, for example, want to call a specific version, you would make that change. But because parallel tools master and subkernels can be different versions, and there's a lot of compatibility, I would really like to just have by default a program called Wolfram or Wolfram Kernel that understands WSTP and doesn't go through another fork or exec or anything. Just works as it has in the last 20 years.
All right. So let me make a suggestion then. Okay. Well, you're saying, okay, shell path discoverable binary, you say should have both Wolfram Script and Wolfram Kernel.
Yes.
And that Wolfram Kernel is primarily used in the -WSTP mode. Maybe in the future there'll be a native ZMQ mode. Is that right?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's the thing that, for example, the front end will launch when it launches a kernel, that parallel tools will launch when it launches a kernel, and probably also on the Wolfram Cloud, when the cloud system launches a kernel, that's the thing it launches.
Right. And in particular on Windows, the kernel very specifically calls Wolfram Kernel because it doesn't want a second icon in the dock and also a DOS console to open just because you've started the front end.
Right, fine, but so just to be clear, then this kernel. So for example, the thing to say about Wolfram Kernel. So Wolfram Kernel is a pure non-iconed binary. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, by default, it creates if you launch it interactively, then by default, it'll have...
Does Wolfram Script have an icon?
Well, no, because it runs in the... Right.
Okay.
Well, if you launch Wolfram Script from the Windows Explorer, then it will open a DOS window.
Okay. So again, has no binary, is again non-iconed, right?
I guess. I mean, right? It's a different kind of non-icon.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So then I claim that the third thing we want under Windows is Wolfram Console, which launches a console. With a Wolfram Language REPL, right? Okay, so the only thing is now missing is what happens to the binary that is currently called Wolfram. Okay? Yes, people agree?
Well, I don't agree that we should invent a new Windows console.
I think we should, because I think it's the only clear way to do this. What is that right now? What is that called right now?
It's called Wolfram Kernel.
Oh, for God's sake.
That's what I showed you.
But you just said that it doesn't generate an icon.
It can be set to not generate an icon.
How?
With a command line option, which is how...
There's no icon.
Yes.
This is a total mess.
Well, it's not our mess. It's the mess of the inventors of these operating systems.
I'm aware. I am aware.
All right.
I mean, if we transition away from the Wolfram binary, we have to do that very carefully because...
Well, we can alias the Wolfram binary to something. I just don't know what the heck it's alias to. What would it be alias to? Would it be alias to Wolfram Script? or to something else?
Well, I mean, it should support the current use case of being called by WSTP and so on. So it should be the Wolfram kernel in the new world.
I mean, on non-Windows platforms, Wolfram is a symlink to Wolfram kernel.
Mhm.
It already is a symlink to Wolfram kernel and exists there just for compatibility.
Okay.
It's just, on Windows, they're actually separate things. And I think, I think it's a corner case that, I think just, writing the documentation and leaving it as is the amount of effort that's justified. I mean, I've already done 90% of that first step of writing the documentation.
We should remove GUI graphical interface from Wolfram kernel on Windows because it's way obsolete, and then we can normalize these things to be pretty much the same.
Itai, your response to that?
I don't. My initial reaction is not to agree with that.
Look, I think the main issue here, I don't think there's anything wrong with having, look, listen, we thought we'd seen the last of command line DOS-like interfaces. But then there's some random, then we had like early Raspberry Pis and things, which were admittedly Linux, but, we thought we'd seen the last of 1988 style interfaces, but we haven't. So I don't think we should kill off a Windows console, because I think we haven't seen the last of them. For some reason, some crazy thing, some spacecraft on its way to wherever, it'll turn out the only thing it has is a Windows console that it can bring up. However, the name is wrong. The fact that Wolfram kernel is the thing that brings up that console is wrong. Now, whether we, are there any programs that will automatically be calling Wolfram kernel? I doubt it.
Well,
No. I meant for the purpose of bringing up a Windows console.
Oh, no.
Right. So that means we don't break anything by having. I mean, look.
I mean, if you want to make it will require changes, right? You need to remove it from the, right? Because right now it's in the start menu, the kernel, right? So if you select it, it opens, right?
Well, then we should call it Wolfram console because that's what it is.
Okay.
I would think. I mean, that case seems very obscure anyway. Oh, gosh, what a mess. Okay. So that still leaves the question of the binary called Wolfram. What does it do? Because you claim we need to have it because that's what things have been expecting to call forever.
And it's also the thing that implements the DOS mode. Yes, I make two arguments. One, that it's the thing that implements the actual REPL in a DOS window.
I don't care what implements it. It could be any complicated name because it's somewhere in the 10,000 files that we ship, right? But the thing that matters is what the users call it.
And I mean...
Right, and the thing that we want the users to use is Wolfram Script. That's the thing that has all the features, et cetera, I think. That's the thing. If you're using the shell, you call Wolfram Script. Now, if you're using an exec inside of some system call, you shouldn't be using Wolfram Script. Because Wolfram Script is a creature of the shell.
Well, but it depends, right? It depends what you want to do. I would argue that whether you want to use Wolfram or Wolfram Script it depends on what you want to do.
Why? What is Wolfram in this case? It's a symlink to Wolfram kernel, isn't it?
Right. Right. So I may as well. Right.
So you should just use Wolfram Kernel in that case.
What
That is the raw binary. That is the thing that you can call as a system call.
Well, you can't direct. I mean, well, I don't want to delve into all the details, but I mean that's a gross oversimplification, right? Because you have the binary, you have on Linux, you also have the shell script that launches it because you need to modify LD library path. It's
Okay, all right, okay, well, okay, fine. Okay,
if you want
the binary call Wolfram, what do we want it to do if we have such a binary? And you claim we need such a binary. So I would claim that binary,
mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, what the heck should it do?
Well, it's the thing that launches a REPL in a DOS window.
No, that's Wolfram Script. That's what should launch a REPL in a DOS window.
If
something else does it as well, so be it. But Wolfram Script is the canonical way of launching a REPL in a generic shell or DOS window. Garrett, sorry.
If we want it as a legacy thing so that people can point at it, we probably want it to still have the same behavior, which is have WSDP available, do the same kind of behavior as Wolfram Kernel.
Yes, but then it becomes a deprecated thing. And what we document for people who want to use the shell is Wolfram Script, as I keep on saying.
I have no objection to that. I just think we should properly, just like we have, proper documentation for Wolfram Script, and we have proper documentation for Mathematica.exe and...
Okay, fine. So then we need proper documentation for Wolfram Kernel, right? Yeah. And Wolfram Kernel, whatever these are, they've got to be sensibly consistent with the Wolfram Script stuff.
Well,
okay.
These are implemented and very kind of old and used in a lot of things.
I'm aware of that. So we have to keep the compatibility with this, but the things going forward that we can document can be sensible.
Right.
And consistent and not just different, like -run. I mean, that's the equivalent, I suppose,
of
-code.
No, it's not.
What's different about it?
It is to run initialization code prior to the launch of the...
Isn't that, don't we have an init thing for that here?
We also have
do we have that or do we not have that here?
I don't think we have that.
Okay, so look, the thing that has to happen, and let's make this separate from this meeting, is to look at the options to Wolfram Kernel and how they correspond to Wolfram Script. Okay, I think we've kind of concluded here that the Wolfram binary as such will be supported merely as a legacy thing, that it will try to support as many of the options of these other things. I mean, maybe we have to still support math as a legacy thing in certain installations.
Well, I mean, we...
Okay, we need to get off this topic. Go ahead.
We need to get off this topic, but actually, I just realized there's actually no, because we also need it for automatic activation. We need Wolfram, or at least we can't use Wolfram Kernel as is for...
Okay, all right, okay. So there's yet more hair here.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
The hard part is that it's so many things are grandfathered in, like...
I know, but I think the approach we should take is the following, okay? We document a nice, clean, logical set of things going forward. We can also have as footnote legacy documentation other things that we leave hanging around for purposes of legacy programs.
Yeah.
Fair?
I mean,
but the thing we need to concentrate on is what is the documentation going forward.
Yeah.
Now we've had a few questions on the live stream, which let's see. If Wolfram Script is sensitive to $path, how does $LD_library path deal with that? Any comments, Itai?
What was the question?
If Wolfram Script is sensitive to $path, how does $LD_library path? How about $LD_library path?
It doesn't. Well, So Garrett, you would it doesn't call does it call the kernel directly, or does it call the Wolfram shell script, that wrapper?
It calls the wrapper because that wrapper sets a lot of the kind of environment variables it needs in some cases.
Right. Right. So it will be sort of right. So basically, LD library path will be modified to suit the kernel binary if necessary.
Okay. Okay. Look. Okay. So bottom line here, we are stuck with a lot of legacy stuff, but we want to document going forward clean, new, consistent stuff. So let's figure out what that should be. Okay, let's just take 1 minute. No, it won't be.
Well, we should do the allowed heads ref page. So
What's that?
We should jump to the last item, which is the allowed heads ref page. So we implemented the design you approved quite a while ago, but we didn't have the ref page hadn't been written. So we just wanted a quick look over it before we defuturize.
A function may descend. And what supports this?
At the moment, I think the functions, well, array depth and total, and the array depth dimensions and totals fully supported. Transpose sort of has a very, 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 very limited.
Do we want to make this experimental or just go ahead with it? I think it looks good.
Yeah, I think we just go ahead with it. And we document it as an option to the first three. We don't document it as an option to transpose because there are issues with it. So
okay,
but that is something.
Right.
I'm not sure you made it experimental.
What's that?
I'm not sure you made
it.
I
didn't want to make it experimental.
Oh, you didn't want to make. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so the only thing that we have left here is this horror of the Unix. Oh my gosh, how many?
It's not horror. It's quite simple.
Right. I mean, there's this thing called Unix permissions mask, which I think is wrong. And
great. Okay.
And I think we pretty much all agree that the current name is wrong. And then the only debate.
So
what is that? What is that? What
okay,
is that?
So,
is that a string?
These are access rights to the file or to a directory. And
no, I'm aware of what they are. I mean, I know how the Unix masks
it can be
work.
displayed in two different ways, like digits, or using a text string, which is just below. But what I claim is that we want to be able to use it programmatically.
Well, so, I think there are two issues.
Yeah.
One is, what is the name of this thing? Because this is not a mask. It's like what's left over after you've removed the mask, right? So
no, it is a mask. It's a bit field. Every one of these things is a bit field. This is
the actual permissions of the file. Permissions mask is what is used when you create a file.
No, I understand, guys, but I understand the UMask idea, but I'm making the point that this thing is a bit field, as in 7 means yes, 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 right?
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, I think
so mask I used I think I named this, and I think I used it in the wrong sense, because you guys, it's not a mask in the sense that it is. What's that?
It's not a mask in the sense that you're subtracting it.
Yes, it's a mask in the sense that you're adding it, which is probably arguably not a mask.
Right. And so I suggested we call it Unix permissions numeric or Unix numeric permissions. I mean, what did we call the other one? I forgot, but it should be there in the email.
Unix permission string and...
Okay, Unix permission string is the RWX thing. Is that correct?
Right. And I think it might make more sense but it's both returning strings, right? So I think it might make more sense.
Maybe it should be called code, Unix permissions code.
I'd be okay with that. My suggestion was to just rename both of them to Unix symbolic permissions and Unix numeric permissions.
Is It's not very symbolic. I mean, now it's
No,
in our
Unix
style of
permission string is
Right.
better.
Well, that's how it's conventionally referred to, right? Those are symbolic
all right.
permissions.
If we say Unix permissions code, does that work for you guys?
I
It
do
does
not
for me.
object. I do not object to that.
Okay.
Constantine, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I like these names.
Okay. Is that all we needed to figure out for this?
That's the most critical
no.
thing. Then there's like, what do you return for something computable or a way to test? And my argument is, well, maybe we should have separate functions because it's really weird to just return.
No, I would say that what we should return there is Unix permissions rules, and what that should return is something which is a permission structure that says
it's
Go ahead.
It's not that convenient to work with something more, some structure. So currently I'm returning an integer because we can use bit operations.
Yeah, but we don't have the symbolic bits
No,
to
we don't.
end it with, so that's.
But this is fast because you return it once and then you can do with this integer what you like.
So at least according to the documentation that was written at some point, the permissions is supposed to match the permissions option that we have for cloudy things.
Yeah, well, in which case it will be an all arrow read, all arrow write, etc., etc., etc.
Yes, but in that case, I cannot reproduce everything because it assumes those groups, so it does not entirely maps into those permissions.
Yeah, I guess there is a question of exactly how, exactly if what we have for clouds completely maps onto Unix permissions and or Windows permissions.
By the way, on our live stream, someone is suggesting Unix permissions for the symbolic form. And since you just mentioned that there are Windows permissions, what the heck do they look like?
So, for one thing, there are 4 of them, at least. It's DEC style, if you remember DEC. Not surprisingly, given David Cutler's involvement in NT. But it also has an ACL.
It's just amazing that this is, well, anyway, the history of these things. Yes, I could expound at length on the story of Xenix and
VMS.
Well, yes, but all kinds of lineages that went through all kinds of companies. Very odd story. Okay, in any case, but okay.
Right, and so. And I don't think we currently have a Windows permissions property, which.
Well, the question is whether we should be calling it Unix permissions string or just Unix permissions. I kind of like Unix permissions string and Unix permissions code because I think that those make it somewhat clear that you're going to get some human readable thing versus some codey thing.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be better to just have a file permissions function that you can just get the read permissions, whether you can read something, whether you can write something?
Sure, but that's separate from the information function. The information function is just one accessor. It's a raw accessor.
I would just never think of using information for something like
so if I have a file and if I want to find out if it is writable, so how can I do it?
Well, right now you would have to do string processing on the result.
Yes, which is horrible. But listen, the function that we should have, and we're not going to get it in this meeting, is a testing function for permissions. So it's things like, file permissions queue or something that could apply to what's that?
File readable queue.
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to go that way, we could go to all of the file readable queue, file writable queue. I mean, actually, okay, so this is similar to the editable arrow true or false thing for cells, for example, right? I mean, and it's kind of complicated because we also want to be able to set the permissions for files, which I do not believe we can do right now, can we?
No.
We should be able to do chmod, chown, etc., etc., etc.
Or maybe file access and then have just some option to check for.
Guys, we're not going to get this designed right now.
Yeah.
Let's loop back. Let's come up with a prototype design. I think we have looked at this before. for doing these file operations, which, gosh, I'm amazed that we've never had before. But as I use Wolfram Language increasingly as my shell, I need more and more of those things. I mean, and I don't know how under Windows /VMS/ God knows what, you know, I don't know what the analogous thing to group and things is.
I don't think anybody understands that.
You know, when at various times in the early history of Mathematica, when we thought when we were thinking about path names, right? There were these, well, even the DOS, disk, C : stuff and so on messes up a bunch of things you might think you could do in terms of file paths. I don't know whether that's all been modernized out by now. But there were really weird things with volumes for DEC machines and so on back in the early days. All right, let's wrap it up here.
Okay.
So we need to come back to this whole question about permissions for files, and those should be done, in concert with Cloud Object permissions. And we should, because we have a set permissions for Cloud Objects, right? Yeah, so that should also work for files. The fact that it doesn't work for files is just wrong.
And will it be okay if the allowed permissions are different?
So
we have this notion of permissions, owner,
This
arrow,
looks
read,
perfectly
write, exit.
fine for files, right?
What's that?
That looks perfectly fine as a file permission.
Right. Well, is there a notion of a group owner and group goes?
There is, absolutely, permissions groups. We have a fairly elaborate permission structure for Cloud Objects. So
Right,
I think
but permissions groups, right? A file may have multiple permission groups.
so can a Cloud Object. Okay, listen, not for this meeting, okay? To be continued at a different time.
Okay.
All right, good stuff, guys, and thanks to the folks on the live stream, and we'll see you all soon.